the rise of Macedonia and the conquests of Alexander the Great. While the Greek city-states were continuing to fight each other, to their north a new and ultimately powerful kingdom was emerging in its own right. Its people, the Macedonians, were mostly rural folk organized in tribes, not city-states, and were viewed as barbarians by their southern neighbors, the Greeks. Barbar would be said by the Greeks for those who could not speak Greek, and therefore those who could not speak Greek were called barbarians. Not until the end of the 5th century B.C.E. did Macedonia emerge as an important kingdom, but when Philip II, from 359 to 336 B.C.E., came to the throne, he built an efficient army and turned Macedonia into the strongest power of the Greek world, one that was soon drawn into the conflicts among the Greeks. The Athenians at last took notice of the new contender. Fear of Philip led them to ally with a number of other Greek states and confront the Macedonians at the Battle of Chaeronea near Thebes in 338 BCE. The Macedonian army crushed the Greeks, and Philip was now free to consolidate his control over the Greek peninsula. The Greek states were joined together in an alliance that we call the Corinthian League because they met at the city of Corinth, a great city of its time. All members took an oath of loyalty. I swear by Zeus, Earth, Sun, Poseidon, Athena, Ares, and all the gods and goddesses, I will abide by the peace, and I will not break the agreements with Philip the Macedonian, nor will I take up arms with hostile intent against any one of those who abide by the oaths either by land or by sea. Philip insisted that the Greek states end their bitter rivalries and cooperate with him in a war against Persia. Before Philip could undertake his invasion of Asia, however, he was assassinated, leaving the task to his son, Alexander. Alexander the Great was only 20 when he became king of Macedonia. He had in many ways been prepared to rule by his father, who had taken Alexander along on military campaigns and had given him control of the cavalry at the pertinent Battle of Chaeronea. After his father's assassination, Alexander moved quickly to assert his authority, securing the Macedonian Empire and its frontiers and smothering a rebellion in Greece. He then turned to his father's dream, the invasion of the Persian Empire. Until that time, the Persian Empire was the greatest that had ever existed. Concerning Alexander's conquest, there is no doubt that Alexander was taking a chance in attacking the Persian Empire, which was still a strong state. In the spring of 334 BCE, Alexander entered Asia Minor with an army of 37,000 men. About half were Macedonians, the rest Greeks and other allies. The cavalry, which would play an important role as a strike force, numbered about 5,000. Of course, these Greeks also wanted to get back at Persia because Persia had defeated the Greeks previously. Alexander's first confrontation with the Persians at a battle at the Granicus River in 334 BCE almost cost him his life but resulted in a major victory. By the following spring, the entire western half of Asia Minor was in Alexander's hands. Meanwhile, the Persian king Darius III mobilized his forces to stop Alexander's army. Although the Persian troops outnumbered Alexander's, the Battle of Issus was fought on a narrow field that canceled the advantage of superior numbers and resulted in another Macedonian victory. After his victory at Issus in 333 BCE, Alexander turned south, and by the winter of 332, Syria, Palestine, and Egypt were under his domination. He took the traditional title of Pharaoh of Egypt and founded the first of a series of cities named after him, Alexandria, as the Greek administrative capital of Egypt. It became and remains today one of the most pertinent cities in Egypt and in the Mediterranean world. In the year 331 BCE, Alexander renewed his offensive, moving into the territory of ancient Mesopotamian kingdoms, and fought a decisive battle with the Persians at Gaugamela, northwest of Babylon. After his victory, Alexander entered Babylon and then proceeded to the Persian capitals at Susa and Persepolis, where he acquired the Persian treasuries and took possession of vast quantities of gold and silver. By 330 BCE, Alexander was again on the march pursuing Darius. After Darius was killed by one of his own men, Alexander took the title and office of Great King of the Persians. But Alexander was not content to rest with the spoils of the Persian Empire. Over the next 3 years, he moved east and northeast as far as modern Pakistan. By the summer of 327 BCE, he had entered India, which at that time was divided into a number of warring states. In 326 BCE, Alexander and his armies arrived in the plains of northwestern India at the Battle of the Hydaspes River. Alexander won a brutally fought battle. When Alexander made clear his determination to march east to conquer more of India, his soldiers, weary of campaigning year after year, mutinied and refused to go on. Reluctantly, however, Alexander turned back, leading his men across the arid lands of southern Persia. Conditions in the desert were extremely appalling. Many had died. The blazing sun and lack of water led to thousands of deaths before Alexander and his remaining troops reached Babylon. Alexander planned still more campaigns, but in June of 323 BCE, weakened from wounds, fever, and probably excessive alcohol consumption, Alexander the Great died at the age of 32. The legacy. Was Alexander great? Alexander is one of the most puzzling, significant figures in all of history. Historians, relying on the same sources, draw vastly different pictures. For some, his military ability, his extensive conquests and creation of a new empire alone justify calling him Alexander the Great. Other historians also praise Alexander's love of Greek culture and his intellectual brilliance, especially in matters of warfare. And, of course, we cannot forget his love of Persian culture. In the lands that he conquered, Alexander attempted to fuse the Macedonians, Greeks, and Persians into a new ruling class. He did do this because he was an idealistic visionary who believed in the concept of universal humanity. Did he believe this, as some suggest, or was he merely trying to bolster his power and create an autocratic monarchy? Those historians who see Alexander as aspiring to autocratic monarchy present a very different portrait of him as a ruthless Machiavellian. One has titled his biography Alexander the Great Failure. These critics ask whether a man who slaughtered indigenous peoples, who risked the lives of his soldiers for his own selfish reasons, whose fierce temper led him to kill his friends, and whose neglect of administrative duties weakened his kingdom, can really be called great. But how did Alexander view himself? We know that he sought to imitate Achilles, the warrior hero of Homer's Iliad. Alexander kept a copy of the Iliad and a dagger under his pillow. He also claimed to be descended from Heracles, the Greek hero who came to be worshipped as a god. Regardless of his ideals, motives, or views about himself, one fact stands out. Alexander ushered in a completely new age, the Hellenistic era, the world of Hellenism. The word Hellenistic is derived from a Greek word meaning to imitate Greeks. It is an appropriate way then to describe an age that saw the extension of the Greek language and Greek ideas into the non-Greek world of the Middle East. Alexander's destruction of the Persian monarchy created opportunities for Greek engineers, intellectuals, merchants, soldiers, and administrators. Those who followed Alexander and his successors participated in a new political unity based on the principle of monarchy. His successors used force in order to establish military monarchies that dominated the Hellenistic world after his death.